What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I'm about to take you on an epic journey into campaigns that go beyond level 20, specifically campaign-defining monsters that will take you beyond level 20, and that's the Epic Legacy Tome of Titans Volume 1 from our good friends over at 2C Gaming. Before we dive into that, I did want to say we're just about to hit 91.5K, so we're eking ever closer. I'll put it out there. I would love to hit 100K by my birthday in July, so we could have a celebration at Gen Con. Let's see if we can make that happen. That being said, Epic Legacy and the whole Epic Legacy series from 2C Gaming is just that, to give you what so many people seem to want, campaigns that go from level 20 and beyond. And the Tome of Titans is serious monsters that define a campaign, and you can build a whole thing around that. So I thought I would go ahead and jump over here and show it to you, but I should also take this opportunity to say I would like to thank 2C Gaming for sponsoring this video, and we've worked out a long-term contract, at least for a little while here, where you'll be seeing more 2C Gaming stuff here on the channel. Every so often, we'll be covering a variety of different things that they've put out over time. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Also, as a quick heads up, Epic Legacy Tome of Titans Volume 2 will be going live on Kickstarter next week. So let's see what we've got here. One of the things I really like, I should show you, is, well, one, they have an index at the end, which is huge. There is also bookmarks, immediate points for that. I want to go through the introduction a little bit, and you can see a variety of different creatures here. And they have a mythic number, right? So mythic monsters are monsters that are very, very, high level, high power. We see challenge rating things in the high 20s, and that's in the monster manual. These mythic monsters are designed for player characters that have gone beyond level 20. And you'll recognize a handful of these, or you may not know exactly what they are, but you'll see thing like the worm that walks, right? So obviously we're in the open game licensed territory. So we can't use things like Lolth, for example. We can use Orcus. We can use Cthulhu, right? The Dark Dragon Queen is a certain 5-headed chromatic dragon. The Mother of Spiders is a certain drow-related goddess of spiders. You get the point, right? And then we see some other ones here: Asmodeus, Demogorgon, and even a primeval Tarrasque. But one thing I like is in the book, it has pictures of everybody who worked on the book, which is pretty cool to see, right? Again, I do have friends that work over at 2C Gaming. You guys know I'm really good friends with Celeste Konowich, but there are other people that I've worked with and talked to in the past here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this preface section, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pick one monster, and there's a lot of content there, so the entirety of this video will likely be just looking at one of the monsters and all the epic content that you get. So it says, how do we use this book? So every great tale is a worthy antagonist, a figure that challenges the heroes in a variety of devious and dangerous ways. Fantasy and 5th edition feature mighty creatures that can fill this role, but they often lack the necessary details to fully utilize their storytelling potential. With the Tome of Titans, that's no longer the case. The awe-inspiring creatures found in this book, from sinister gods to heroic knights, each potential to tell a different type of story in your campaign and shape your game world. There is also some really nice art that you can see throughout here, very evocative pieces of art. There it is, the Dark Dragon Queen. Seem familiar? But I thought we'd go on with our good old buddy Cthulhu. Everybody knows Cthulhu or knows of Cthulhu in some way for the most part. And as such, I thought was a good creature to utilize for this discussion. So one thing it's going to do is it's going to give you a whole background and description of the creature, and then it actually gives you a nice breakdown of the profile of the creature, right? What is their personality? What kind of ideals do they have? What bonds do they have? Flaws? And then the legend of said creature. Obviously, Cthulhu, there's a lot there, right? Living beyond the stars, coming to Earth, the whole falling, being sunk below the ocean, all that kind of stuff. And it does have some interesting things about Cthulhu in your campaign. It says, a campaign featuring Cthulhu rarely begins with a mention of its name. Instead, vile actions of a cult are exposed. It's cosmic horror. It's high level. And there's one interesting thing. Where is it? It's coming up here. It says, Opposing such a force to face the unknown, with such power comes a sinister presence. The Cult of Cthulhu should be everywhere in your campaign, working from the shadows to wake their patron and spread its influence. The character's investigation should only reveal the full magnitude of what they face and leave them with a single dire task: to face the Great Old One on the battlefield and return it to slumber. Few people in the world have any knowledge of the Great Old Ones and their goals. Every clue the party gathers should come with a hefty price and feel more and more like a step away from a safe world they know. And there was a line in here about, I forget if it's, okay. Let's see. No, it's somewhere in here, but basically it has a thing that goes on to say, if you love to just smash faces and destroy monsters and things like that and just be the superhero, perhaps Cthulhu isn't the villain for you, because Cthulhu has a lot of psychological sanity, spooky, that kind of stuff. It's not the kind of smash faces and just destroy enemies kind of a campaign built around that. There's a lot of intrigue and the inner workings and the secrecy of the cult and so on. But Celeste, who wrote this monster, put an author's note here, and I like this. It says, "Oh, Cthulhu, here we are again. Few monsters have continued to grip human imagination the way Cthulhu has over the past decades. Despite Lovecraft's problematic values and societal evils of banding about mental health issues, we can't help but be fascinated with the great old ones who lurk beyond the stars. Herein lies my attempt to bring you a Cthulhu capable of shaking off the traditional rubber-skinned monster mantle and instead bring you a subtle master of terror waiting to collect its due. This design does not rely on the worn-out tropes of madness to communicate devastation, focusing instead on the far more relatable emotions of fear and dread. 5th edition, oh, this is the part right here. 5th edition is often a game about stomping faces to arrive at a sure victory. If that sounds like your kind of game, Cthulhu is likely not the villain for you. Cthulhu can never really die. A battle against an eldritch horror is all about surviving for as long as possible before inevitably breaking in the wake of the cosmic unknown. It is a being of infinite complexity and requires a subtle hand to play. Wield these pages only if you dare." You can see some epic art here of Cthulhu as well. So it goes on to talk about, it concludes here with Cthulhu and then talks about the different challenges, right? So exploration challenges, it talks a lot about the different regional effects that Cthulhu will have, a lot of focus on dreams, interacting with characters' dreams. Cthulhu can share their dreams, altering other people's dreams, making them make insight checks. Or it says, experience a deadly challenge in the dream, forcing them to make a group insight check. On a failure, affected creatures gain no benefit from the rest and are frightened of Cthulhu. Or when a creature allied with Cthulhu begins a long rest, it can choose to offer itself fully to Cthulhu. And if doing so, they will transform into the Deep One template, which Celeste also managed to sneak a template in here as well. If you know anything about me, you know I love templates because it just allows you to expand the list of monsters you already have. And if Cthulhu is defeated, all of these effects are suppressed for a period of 100 years. The Cthulhu also epic monster having a lair, and there are some interesting lair actions that Cthulhu can take if you happen to fight Cthulhu there. And then we get some actual exploration-based encounters, which I really like this little section. So let's grab, let's grab Dreamwalker. I think this is an interesting one. A mysterious being calling itself the Dreamwalker appears in the character's dreams. The ethereal figure claims a terrific force is rising from the depths to drown the world, and that they should seek her in the waking world. However, before they can be told where to find her, a mass of tentacles appears and drags her away screaming. All that can be heard as she pleads for her help are 2 words: Miskatonic University. Linking you into Cthulhu. Very, very nicely done. Then we also have some social encounters, right? We have a couple different options, right? Otherworldly desires. There's one about the Necronomicon, which not to be confused with the Evil Dead Necronomicon, which is my preferred Necronomicon. This is the one from Lovecraft, and it's being sold, and the starting bid's $50K. But I love signal interference. When clerics attempt to contact their deities, they instead find themselves speaking with Cthulhu. This horrific turn of events has shattered the faith of many a believer as religions across the realm struggle to cope with the deafening silence from their gods. When communicating with Cthulhu, a strange rhythmic chanting can be heard in an alien language that defies all comprehension. How this was accomplished remains a mystery, but one thing is clear. If this interference cannot be stopped, Cthulhu will be one step closer to overwhelming the world. The only clue lies in the strange language, which is believed to be used by a reclusive race of starspawn that broke from Cthulhu long ago and now lives in hiding. I mean, that is just chef's kiss, amazing, just storylines that you could run with that. I love that. And then we have combat encounters as well, right? Obviously, you don't want to be fighting Cthulhu. That's a bad day for everybody. But this particular combat encounter is called the Night Terror, and it's an encounter level 14. So, having started Cthulhu's curiosity, the Great Old One elects to visit the dreams of the party. During a long rest, they basically find themselves inside a sealed tomb within Cthulhu's sunken city. And then, to wake from the nightmare, the party must escape the tomb before they succumb to Cthulhu's power. Such an encounter includes the following elements. It says lots of wisdom saving throws, right? The terror of death stalks the characters. While experiencing the encounter, they will be repeatedly asked to attempt wisdom saving throws, as the Great Old One assaults their mind. If they fail 3 or more wisdom saving throws, they immediately awaken with 5 levels of exhaustion. If an affected creature fails a death saving throw while in this dream, the failed death saving throw counts towards the number of wisdom saving throws they have failed. Then we move into the different rooms here, showing off different options and clues and things. The first room, the second room, black gates. And it says, after the whispers are heard, the nightmare ends. All characters wake up from the dream, gain a number of levels of exhaustion equal to the number of wisdom saving throws they failed over the course of the dream. And then we have different tactics here, right, for Cthulhu in battle, right? Artillery. Cthulhu has no understanding of mercy or honor and only a passing comprehension of pain. In combat, the Great Old One inflicts catastrophic damage on both body and mind. There is no rhyme or reason to its battle strategy. Cthulhu simply acts according to its alien whims, which may seem completely illogical or foolhardy to rational observers. However, the Great Old One can afford to be efficient in battle with a host of deadly interactions to compensate for a less than stellar tactical mind. Its primary weapon is its tentacles, which ensure any creature ensnared in their grasp is vulnerable to its mental attacks. Use this interaction to ensure Cthulhu visits dreadful ruin on characters who feel being grappled by the Great Old One isn't a big deal. Note that every saving throw Cthulhu forces is either intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, so make a grappled creature a high priority target. Particularly notable is the Shadow of Cthulhu feature. This strange trait allows Cthulhu to effectively occupy a huge area while simultaneously providing no advantages to its enemies. Movement within this space provokes attacks of opportunity from Cthulhu, and creatures within cannot have total cover from the Great Old One. The ability is abstract, so be sure to communicate to the players such an interaction is only possible thanks to its ability to warp space and time. Also, can we talk about the fact that this even exists, this section? This is one of the things that I think is sorely lacking from 5th edition products as it stands. Combat tactics. This is things that have existed in older editions where it would tell you sort of maybe even to the, like, on the first turn it will use this ability followed by blah, blah, blah. But it would give you a good insight into the mind of the creature that you're going to be throwing at your players to know whether it's a fight or flight response, how it interacts, what moves it would prioritize over others, things of that nature. And I mean, we're trying to comprehend that now for the Great Old One, but there's at least tactics here to try and use. And then it also has some options here for easier tactics as well as harder tactics if you really want to bring down your players, if they're really strategic, tactically minded, and you need to take it to another level to make it challenging for them. It says, use the terrific range of Shadow of Cthulhu to begin the battle early. All the while, Cthulhu should be annihilating grappled creatures using Call of Cthulhu often. That's one of his abilities. Any affected creatures should be torn apart by Cthulhu while their minds are banished. Use Great Old One's influence via legendary actions to get in some powerful spells or remove nasty magical effects. Look for any mind blank spells on characters and be sure to remove them as quickly as possible. Apply Eldritch Storm when the party is at their worst. A few well-placed bolts on grappled creatures can ensure the characters go down simultaneously. And then they also have some stuff here about Mythic Cthulhu. As we said, if you're going to be going with the Mythic options, there are a bunch of how the different Mythic versions work. As far as allies for Cthulhu, it says when Cthulhu sleeps, lesser beings work to prepare their way for the Great Old One's awakening. The most common allies are the humanoids who form the cult, and a race of amphibious aberrations known as the Deep Ones serve Cthulhu and frequently emerge from the oceans to aid its cults and proliferate terror. And then here we have the stat block of the man himself, or of the giant aberration himself. You can see standard Cthulhu is a challenge rating 28 creature, 610 hit points, 22 AC, ridiculous stats, saving throws, and skills. resistances to acid and cold, immunity to psychic, and several conditions. It has mythic resistances. If it fails a saving throw, it can expend an unspent legendary action to succeed instead. Out of touch, it barely registers reality. As we know, Cthulhu would take 15 or less damage from a single instance of damage. It takes no damage. Here's that Shadow of Cthulhu. It casts a dimensional shadow, 120-foot radius sphere around it. Cthulhu is treated as though it is occupying that space at all times, though it suffers no penalties nor provokes attacks of opportunity for sharing this space. But creatures, nor could any barrier prevent them from being targeted or touched by Cthulhu. This effect suppressed in areas of magical daylight. What is dead may never die. If Cthulhu is slain, its form vanishes and reappears in a state of deep slumber a century later. Can only be prevented by divine intervention or a wish spell. We can see its tentacles attack have a 60-foot reach, do 3d12 plus 9 bludgeoning damage and 3d12 psychic damage. They are grappled, and they cannot succeed on intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saves. It has this ability, Call of Cthulhu. It forces a creature to attempt a DC 25 charisma saving throw. On a failure, this mind is pulled into Cthulhu's realm of dreams. The body of an affected creature becomes incapacitated while the mind wanders nightmarish dreamscape of Cthulhu's subconscious. At the end of each of its turn, an affected creature can repeat the saving throw, ending the effect and returning to its body on a success. A creature whose mind remains in Cthulhu's subconscious in this manner for 1 continuous minute becomes permanently trapped there beyond the help of anything short of a wish spell. A creature that succeeds on a saving throw against this effect becomes immune to it for a whole year. Cthulhu also has the Eldritch Storm ability, which recharges on a 5 or 6, which summons a 60-foot radius, 1-mile-high cylinder centered on a point Cthulhu chooses within 300 feet. He has to concentrate, or it has to concentrate on it as though it was a spell. And then that whole area is heavily obscured for creatures other than Cthulhu. Creatures other than Cthulhu are deafened by the sound. Additionally, he can choose to call down 3 lightning bolts to hit a creature anywhere within that 60-foot radius, 1-mile-high cylinder. They must make a DC 25 wisdom saving throw or take 10d6 necrotic damage and 10d6 lightning damage on a fail, half on a success. It also has Great Old One's influence. It demonstrates its otherworldly supremacy, causing one of the following effects. It casts a warlock spell of 5th level or lower with a DC 25 or plus 17 to hit for spell attacks. No components needed. It deals psychic damage now, regardless of what it does. If it did some other type, it has now been converted to psychic damage. And if it forces someone to make a saving throw that's not intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, it is now an intelligence saving throw. Or he can end an effect of magic of 8th level or lower. Or he reads the surface thoughts of a creature within his range of his telepathy, which is a full mile. And while reading that creature's thoughts until the start of its next turn, he cannot have disadvantage on attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws against that creature. It also has 3 legendary actions: 1 to make a tentacle attack, 2 to use Great Old One's influence, 3 to activate Call of Cthulhu, and 3 to activate All-Consuming Shadow, which is until the end of its next turn. The radius of Shadow of Cthulhu, which is normally 120 feet, is now a mile. And then it immediately makes a single tentacle attack against each creature of its choice in the affected area. Now, to me, it sounds like the affected area is a full mile, and due to the nature of Shadow of Cthulhu working the way it does, I feel like that could happen, although the tentacles, mind you, have a range and a reach of 60 feet, but you know, why would they spell that out separately there? Because normally Shadow of Cthulhu is a 120-foot radius. This now has adjusted it to be a mile, so I think you can make those attacks against anything within a mile. Now, next up here is the Mythic Cthulhu. I'm not going to really go through this because a lot of what you're seeing here is what we just saw with just some additional boosts in numbers, right? So if we looked at our original Cthulhu, it was Armor Class 22, 610 hit points. Mythic Cthulhu, which is a Mythic 8, has 3,662 hit points and a 24 AC. This reminds me of like the gods, it was like Deities and Demigods or something like that, was an old 3.5 book, or it had like all the stats for all the Greek gods and things like that. This is what this reminds me of, or like the actual Faerunian or Greyhawk gods as well. But I do notice a lot of the stuff here seems to be the same. It's just the saving throws, the ranges, and things like, and the damage has been increased, right? Shadow of Cthulhu seems to be the same. Touch of Cthulhu, it takes more damage, and so on. We can see that the Eldritch Storm has been bumped to D8s, and so on. So we'll move on from there. And we'll talk a little bit here about the cultists of Cthulhu, and more importantly, the Deep Old One template, which is what we talked about where Cthulhu may grant someone something more. It says, Deep Ones are twisted creatures infested with the essence of Cthulhu. Their skin becomes rubbery and fish-like, they sprout gills, and their minds are invariably twisted towards evil. Their eyes are bulbous like those of a fish, while their voices gurgle as if constantly choking on fluid. When a flesh and blood creature becomes a Deep One, it retains its statistics described, or as described here. A creature that is not composed of flesh and blood cannot become a Deep One. So they become an aberration. They gain 4 additional hit dice and recalculate their hit point total. Their strength and charisma go up by 3 to a max of 22, and their wisdom decreases by 4 to a minimum of 2. Damage immunities, it becomes immune to acid damage and the grappled condition. It gets dark vision out to 120 feet and can see in magical darkness. It knows how to speak, read, and write deep speech. I think you pretty much only speak deep speech. I believe it's only a spoken language. Its challenge rating increases by 3, and its proficiency bonus increases to match whatever the new challenge rating is, and it has the following traits. It is amphibious, so it can breathe water and air. It has a swim speed equal to its walk speed. Beneath the waves, if submerged in a liquid, the creature has total cover against creatures that are not completely submerged in the same body of water. Foul mucus. The creature's body is coated in acidic mucus. When a creature that touches the Deep One or hits it with a melee attack within 5 feet, they take 3d6 acid damage. And Servant of Darkness. The creature must obey any commands given by Cthulhu or those who act in his name. The creature follows the commands to the best of its ability and can never willingly act in a manner that goes against the intentions of the creature giving the commands. And here we can see perhaps this is a beholder or perhaps a flump or something that has been infected. Obviously, it doesn't have specifics here, but it says there's a little bit of the cultists. Again, more lore on the Deep Ones. We can continue on to the next page. And here we can see an Eye of the Deep, which is essentially a beholder, but they can't use the term beholder because that is owned by WotC. And a part of, sorry about that, WotC's property. Okay. So here is the Eye of the Deep stat. It is slightly different than a traditional beholder, though, so you'll notice challenge rating 25, substantial resistances, hit points, and so on. It's also amphibious. It has Gaze of Cthulhu, which is kind of a similar option here to a beholder, right? It has a central eye, projects a 120-foot cone of bright green light. When it moves on its turn, it can choose to move the eye and change the direction of the cone. Creatures illuminated assume their true form. Additionally, flesh and blood creatures illuminated by the light that is reduced to 0 hit points or slain is instead reduced to 1 hit point and becomes incapacitated for 8 hours, during which time it does not need to eat, drink, or breathe. A creature so incapacitated begins a horrific transformation into a Deep One. Greater Restoration or Heal will stop that, and the only way to fix it after the fact is Wish or Greater Magic. Will of the Deep, once per turn. When the eye fails an Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma save, Cthulhu can intervene and cause the eyes to succeed. When the Great Old One does, the eye takes 6d12 psychic damage. It has multi-attack to make 2 tentacles, 4 arms, or 1 tentacle and 2 arm attacks. The arms have a 15-foot reach, do bludgeoning damage plus acid damage. And when the eye would make an arm attack, it can instead choose to forego the attack to cast Dispel Magic with no components. Tentacles have a 50-foot reach, 3d12 plus 9 bludgeoning plus 8d6 acid, and they're grappled. A creature that ends each of its turn grappled in this way takes 8d6 acid damage, and the eye can choose to pull the target up to 30 feet towards it. Wave of Mutilation, which charges on a 5 or 6, sends out a sickly blast of energy in a 60-foot radius. Each creature must make a DC 23 con save or be infected with a vile disease known as Living Rot. When a creature so infected would gain hit points, it instead regains no hit points and takes necrotic damage equal to the number of hit points it would have gained. That is a brutal curse. Was it disease? And then lastly, we have Witness. The eye chooses a creature it can see to behold the dark horror of Cthulhu. It must make a DC 23 Wisdom save or have its mind sent to the Great Old One until the start of the eye's next turn. A creature so affected cannot move or take actions as its consciousness beholds the cosmic eldritch horror that is the Great Old One. When the creature's mind returns, it is traumatized by the experience. It cannot gain advantage on attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws, and it cannot speak by any means. The effect only lasts when a creature forgets its memory of the experience. It moves on also here to talk a little bit about the Star Spawn, and there is also a magic item called the Eldritch Grimoire, which is a legendary magic item that requires attunement by a spellcaster. It says an Eldritch Grimoire is a tome of profane power. This, I think, would also double for what the Necronomicon in H.P. Lovecraft should be. While you're tuned to a grimoire, you can use it as a spellbook to prepare and record spells. Additionally, each grimoire comes inscribed with 7 spells of the Great Old One's choosing. While you hold the grimoire, you can read from the book to cast one of the spells unless it's casting time without the need... using its casting time without the need for any material components. A spell cast in this manner does not... a spell cast in this manner gains one of the following benefits of your choice. If it's concentration, the grimoire maintains the concentration instead of you. It can only be broken if the book is destroyed, so that's a great way to get double concentration up. If the spell forces one or more creatures to make a saving throw to resist its effects, the DC is increased by 4 for the first saving throw made against that spell. If the spell requires that you take 1 or more attack rolls, you score crits now on 18 to 20. And if the spell is a casting time greater than an action, you may instead cast it as an action. Consider that, folks. Things that would take hours or days to cast could now be cast in an action, as far as I can tell, right? Casting time greater than an action. Yeah, anything that's more than 6 seconds is greater. You can now cast it as an action. However, it is cursed. The grimoire is cursed. When you cast a spell from the book, the time until Cthulhu wakes from slumber, again, is reduced by 5 years. And then here we can see the Star Spawn. We do, I think, have Star Spawn in some of our official 5th edition material, but this is the 2C Gaming version. It's challenge rating 12. Let's see. When completely submerged in a liquid, the Star Spawn has total cover against creatures that are not completely submerged. It has a disturbing visage. When a creature can see it, they must make a wisdom saving throw or take psychic damage equal to half their hit point maximum. Unless surprised, the creature can avert their eyes, so it has sort of almost like a Medusa effect, but it just deals psychic damage rather than starting to turn you to stone. Has a beak attack for 4d10 plus 4, tentacles with 15-foot reach that grapple larger, smaller creatures, and while they're grappled, they're restrained and take damage at the start of the turn. And then Psychic Shriek recharges on a 5/6. Psychic Scream in a 60-foot radius centered on it shreds the minds of those who hear it. Creatures of the Star Spawn's choice in the affected area must succeed on a DC 18 intelligence saving throw or be stunned until the end of their next turn. And that covers the entirety of Cthulhu. Thank you once again to 2C Gaming for sponsoring this video. Thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for continuing to sponsor me and the channel and supporting me as well. And then again, let's just drive that number up. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.